Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the 2023 New Jersey International Film Festival Filmmaker Q&A series that we've set up. Today, we have a wonderful filmmaker out from the other side of the United States, and it's Derek Johnson. He's going to be talking about his film called Healing Waters, and it's a documentary, a biopic about a very famous photographer named Linda Troeller, who's actually living in New Jersey as well. And so we're going to be talking for the next 25 minutes with Derek. But before we do that, I just need to let you know that the 28th annual New Jersey International Film Festival will be a hybrid festival, which means you can watch the films online as well as in person for most of the screenings. $15 buys you admission to both the online and the in-person screening. If you'd like to come and see all of the movies, I highly recommend you buy an all-access pass, which will cut the cost to almost in half. It's $100 for an all-access pass. We're showing 35 films that were selected from 711 entries from around the world. So we're showing the creme de la creme. And Derek's film is one of those. We're showing a handful of documentaries. And welcome, Derek. It's nice to see you.
Yes, great to see you as well.
So, as I always ask our filmmaker friends, how did you get involved in making this film?
Well, let's see. Linda is actually a longtime friend and mentor of mine. And in fact, I was thinking about it this morning. Shortly after 9/11 in New York City, one of my early credits was working on HBO film, and we had a really big opening, and I got to do the red carpet walk and all that. And at the time, Linda was still in New York, and so I invited Linda to come with me. So many years ago, we used to go to these kind of events together as friends, and she was kind of showing me the ropes. And so fast forward some years ahead, and when I started producing my own projects, I thought I really wanted to thank Linda somehow for all the wonderful support she's given me over the years.
Yeah.
And I knew she really wanted her story to be told. So I said, hey, I'd like to try and maybe do a biography film with you. And she said, okay. So that's how we got started.
It's wonderful. And I guess your film is a hybrid film in its own right, because it's a docudrama where you have actors playing Linda and also Linda speaking for herself, which I thought was really great because in a way, you give us the kind of background story and we get to know a little bit about when she was a child. And then we see how she makes that evolutionary leap to becoming the photographer that she is today. So was that a conscious decision not to just kind of make it a straight documentary, but to use actors to play Linda and kind of do it as a docudrama? Was that something that you had initially thought of, or was it something that came into focus as you were working on the project?
Well, thank you for that question. Actually, that's great. So it's something that the opening scene I definitely had intended to create, which I really feel like the story is an event that took place, 50 years ago. And I felt like there was so much emotion and such an evolutionary experience for Linda as a young child that I really wanted to have that be shown as part of the film. So that one definitely we did. And during production, unfortunately, Linda's a lot of her archive was lost in a house fire.
I know. I remember.
And so, some of that material we certainly were planning on using in the film. So in place of that, um, what I decided to do was, and then also we had COVID lockdown, so which ended up being great for the film. So Linda and I just started collaborating more and more, and really honed in on her life milestones. And I thought, well, okay, so what I'm going to do then is create some more scenes to help, share her story and the things that got her to where she is today.
Yeah, I mean, I looked in the credits and I said, did he really shoot this at Point Pleasant, New Jersey? And then I saw in the credits that it was in Washington, which is where you're based. And I thought it really looked a lot like Point Pleasant. So I think you did a great job.
Yeah, I actually, that was funny because I I went there to scout the location, and I sent some pictures to Linda and I said, "Hey, to the best of your memory, does this look like Point Pleasant in the when you were a child?"
Mm.
And she said, "Yeah." She said, "It looks just like how I remember."
Mm.
And so, the film also ends at the actual place in New
Right, right,
Jersey.
right.
So, yeah.
I think that was pretty amazing. And then I also liked the way you fuse those two elements that I just talked about, where you had the actors and you had Linda speaking first person, direct address to the camera. And I thought that it made the film even more personable that way. And I
Mhm.
mean, there's some pictures that I knew and I was familiar with from knowing of Linda's work from earlier experiences, but there were so many things that I learned that I didn't know anything about. So I think viewers who are interested in learning more about how difficult it was for a woman to make art, in the 60s when she was a young person. And that one scene that I remember where she's talking about where she had shot her first nude of herself, or no, of an actor, of Peter. I guess his name was Peter.
Yeah, yeah.
And the professor, I guess she went to West Virginia University, which is a very conservative place, and he freaked out that he saw this nude photograph in the wash. And I guess that's what I loved about your film, that you put to the fore how difficult it was to be a woman in a man's photographics world. And was that something you really wanted to do as well, to put that to the fore?
Yeah, that was actually one of the things of how that transpired over uh, when we kind of dove deep with Linda
Mm.
over the lockdown, and even things that I didn't know which about Linda, and I'd already known her for 2 decades at that point. So, um, one of the things we discovered is that Linda's actually creating photography and involved in photography as a model
Right.
during the first um, period of time when feminist views were starting to come into the art world.
Yeah.
So she's like part of the first generation of people who were supporting the female voice in
Mm.
what she did. And yes, of course, it was very difficult. In photography, it was primarily a male, what they call the male gaze was what you would see mostly. And then, when I think back to the early times had met Linda, um, working on the Healing Waters book, she was just about to go to press when I had met her.
Mm.
And I remember looking through that book and thinking, I've there's something about these pictures that I just couldn't put my finger on it, but I just had never seen anything like it. And then it occurred to me while we were making this film that what I was looking at was the female gaze through her work, because my education was entirely introduced through still photography and films through the male gaze.
Mm.
So that I thought was really significant, and I wanted to make sure that that we captured that, because that is actually a big part of her vision, and something that she's still currently working on today.
Yeah, and that's why she's so amazing, because she's a trailblazer, and changing the phallocentric male gaze, into a different way of looking, and seeing a lot of these objects that she shoots in the spas and in the Healing Waters book, and the abstractions that you see are really quite wonderful. And I think you'll get to see a lot of these images in your film, which as I was thinking about your movie and the questions I was going to ask you, the first one was about the mix of docudrama and kind of standard documentary, but you picked some really interesting interviews to kind of pepper or punctuate the film as you move forward. And we have a critic, we have a person who owns a beauty space, and then we have an academic, and we also have a person who sells books. And there's one other person as well. How did you pick these 5 people? They are A.D. Coleman, Marion Schneider, Kat James, Michelle Marsh, and Willie Williams as your interviews.
Mm-hmm. Well, there was kind of a balance of, how what kind of parts of the story that I wanted to share, and what the backgrounds and the connection to Linda and photography were.
Yeah.
So Alan Coleman, of course, is a fairly known art critic, and I actually had met him around the same time that I met Linda, and he had a significant role in her early time discovering Healing Waters. He was traveling with her and things like that, and so he was very knowledgeable about, and he and her have been friends, their whole lives.
Yeah.
And so I thought, his perspective was really important for me to capture that. Let's see. Then we have Kat James, is somebody who's transitioned from working in sort of high-end beauty and makeup, and moved more into the health side, and she's just a friend of Linda, so she kind of understands both sides of the photography art world. She's very close to Linda. She works with her as a health practitioner, and I thought getting people who are real close to Linda, and then her and Kat and her have also worked on some projects together, so her view was also important, because she was someone who was with her during the creation of some of the work. And of course,
oh, frozen. Uh-oh. You're still there, Derek.
Actually have a gallery in one of their spas in Germany that's a permanent installation of Linda's photography there. So to give you an idea of how important they are, they certainly have been kind of a base camp for her in Europe. So because she goes to Europe every year with her work. So and I've met both of them, and I thought, we got to have a spa owner, of course. So they were gracious enough to work with me and put a team together for me, and we actually did our interview remotely. So
wow.
Yeah, and then Willie was great too. He's also a photographer and educator, and he's also known Linda a little bit longer than me. So there's another voice that can come in, and also Willie, he curated a group show called The Female Gaze, and he had some of Linda's work in there. So I thought, that's somebody who really he's gonna bring something to this story that I think was really important. So that's where Willie comes in.
I just thought the selection of the people that are the talking heads kind of really added to the perspective, and so I thought they were good selections. But
and then there's also, I forgot about Michelle.
Yeah.
And Michelle, who's another person in photography that was working at Aperture during the time that Healing Waters' book was being published.
Yeah.
And it turns out Michelle's kind of bi-coastal, so she was home base has been in Seattle, but she actually worked at Aperture full time, which is obviously in New York. So I'd met Michelle originally in New York, and she's just a walking encyclopedia of photography, and was very intimately knowledgeable about Linda's work, and just wonderful speaker about the female gaze and the history of photography and those things, because I think all that stuff really ties in the story of where Linda walked. So that was also a very important interview, I think, for the film.
Yeah, and I think that the way that you crafted your film into a mix of these stage scenes with Linda speaking and these people who knew her give a very well-rounded view of her and the path that she took from early in the 50s through, where she is starting out as a photographer and how she's made her way. So I think if folks want to really get an overview of Linda's life, your film is really the place to start. And I think that, you did a masterful job.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm super grateful to have all the interviewers, Michelle and AD and everybody else. It really was such an honor to work with everyone, and everyone, of course, had just such the right amount of things to say.
How long did it take you to make the film, Derek?
It took about 5 years. Part of that was the COVID delay kind of set us back a couple, but and then it's an independent project, so they tend to take a little bit longer.
I know them well.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's why I asked, because it just feels like you invested a lot of time and energy in the film, and it shows because it's not just something that was slapped together. It really was well thought out. There is a kind of timeline you can follow. I love the graphics. The music was excellent too. I wrote down that Brianna Tam, she does an excellent job kind of creating atmosphere around the imagery that we see. I also thought that most of the work was divvied up between you and Ali, where Ali did a lot of the editing and you were the cinematographer. I mean, how did you guys come to work together?
I met Ellie working in Seattle on some other projects, and we've collaborated on some significant work as well in Seattle. And I had already
photography or film or
in film, yeah. I was producing a people of color and women influencer project that went on, I think, for about 1.5 years, and she was like my sidekick for that. So really, Allie can string a story together and edit like nobody else. So I thought, God, I just would love to get her on this. And it's when you're working on a project, it's hard to do your own editing. So having somebody also too coming from the female perspective was important to me in this project. And in fact, actually, the whole cast and crew all the way through the film, there were only 2 men working on the film.
Wow.
My drone op and myself. So
right.
Which obviously we couldn't find a female drone op at the time, but yeah, I wanted to keep that the authenticity of the female voice, and I felt like Allie could really nail that. So and she certainly did. So.
I think you're a sensitive guy too, because the last filmmakers I interviewed was also about a guy who shot a woman's story, but he was so sensitive to her. And I think you also were so sensitive to Linda because you've known her. So there's, a lot of a love that went into your movie. And I think that's really crucial. And to have somebody kind of keep you honest too is very helpful. But I wrote down the two young Lindas. I thought they were both excellent also. I wrote down Carolina Kovacevic and
Uh-huh.
Diana Jean Oliphant. They were both excellent as kind of stand-ins for Linda when she was younger. How did you find them?
Well, let's see. I think Carol and I worked on something else. Or I think no, we did a formal casting for young Linda,
Hmm.
um, and uh, and she just something about her. I could just there was like a spark in her eye that I could see, and um, I mean, she just like was so lovely. I remember shooting and thinking, man, this little girl is just so talented. And that opening scene was, I think personally, is a very challenging thing to perform because there's no talking parts. So you have to be able to display the emotion to take the viewer through the scene because it's completely visual. So
And she's so
she took
caring in the way that
she
and the way
just
that she looks out the window. And those scenes are really, really quite wonderful.
yeah, I mean she took the direction perfectly, and I didn't have to tell her twice, and it was just great to work with. And same thing too with 30s Linda, and she was also part of that casting. So um, yeah, I have a really great casting agent in Seattle. So
It's an art in itself finding good
yeah,
people to have on your film because without that, the films don't really happen.
yeah,
They can sink the film.
Melissa at Big Fish in Seattle.
Wonderful.
Yeah, in fact, she's practically one of my creative partners because all my projects I'm reaching out to her for. So
It's as I tell my students, the things that you need to be a good filmmaker are not talent so much, but the people that you know that can help you raise the money and the people that you know that can help you make the film. And
that's
because you can't do
100%.
it all by yourself.
It's all about relationships, right?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah,
All right.
and of
Well,
course the people that show the film too. So
yes, of course, we're very crucial because we're here to show good films. A lot of film festivals, they'll spend money on parties and, red carpets and things like that. We don't care about that. We want to show good movies, good humanist movies about the wonderful parts of man. And your film certainly fits the bill. Linda's such a great person and, is able to provide a perspective on the world that you can't get anywhere else. All
thank
right.
you.
I wanted to share screen because we're running out of time here. Let me just make sure I've got everything set up. All right. We're going to switch that to that. And we're going to go back here. All righty. I think I screwed up. Let me just make sure. Right. And then we go back. I've been doing this for so long, and you think you've got it all down, and then something else ends up happening. So this is our homepage, and this is where folks normally would go pre-COVID, and everything would be here at our njfilmfest.com site. But since COVID, we've partnered with Eventive, which is our streaming provider. So everything is kind of now based there. But since people come here, they can see where we're going to be screening films. This is in the background, Voorhees Hall. That's where we'll be screening Derek's film and many of the other movies there too. So all you need to do is hit current events and it'll bounce you down one. And this is general information on the festival. And instead of everything being here, you need to click on the buy tickets link, which bounce you to our Eventive site. And this is the welcome page, which gives you basic information. Our festival will be taking place between June 2nd and 11th. There'll be screenings on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. The online component is available for 24 hours on the show date. So Derek's film is playing on June 10th, which is a Saturday, and it'll be available all day from 12:01 midnight +1 all the way to 11:59 that evening. And the great thing about the Eventive site is once you start watching and you want to only watch half of it, you still have 24 hours to finish watching it once you start watching. So if you start watching, for example, on June 10th at 11:45 in the evening, you still have through the next day to be able to watch it. The in-person screening is at 5 p.m. on the 10th, and you can get basic information about where to go. But I highly recommend you click on tickets and screenings, and that opens up our catalog page, which divvies up the programs by subject. And you can see the Healing Waters film screening here. It'll be playing with Dancing Without Steps, The Art of Improvisation with Margaret Beals. It's a film about a very wonderful dance improviser. And, you know, I was scratching my head about how I wanted to show your film, Derek, and I thought that this was the perfect complement to the film because it's about two women artists who kind of trailblaze in a male world, and I thought they were both go really well together. I also thought that Linda would love to meet Margaret. Margaret's going to be at the screening. She's a wonderful person as well. And so,
Oh, great. Yeah.
yeah, and if you want to buy tickets, you just hit pre-order now, or you can click learn more, which bounces you to that particular screening page, and you can get basic information about the movies. You can click on either box, and it gives you more information about this film as well. You can go back to the festival site, and these 4 buttons are things that you might want to explore. The film guide gives you individual information about the movies, so you can make your way through here, and you see the Healing Waters has its own page. And then you could also go to the menu page, which allows you to explore the site that way. And the schedule page is for those who like things linear. You can work your way all the way down to see all the films that we're showing and the dates that they're being screened. And all the programs are divvied up by a red line. And then as we make our way down to June 10th, which is on the second weekend of our festival, you get to June 10th and you see that it's online for 24 hours and in person at 5, Dancing Without Steps and Healing Waters film, both together. So I'm going to just kind of go back to our welcome page. If you want to buy an all access pass, you want to watch all the movies, this is a great deal. It's like half price. Individual programs are $15 and the all access pass is $100. If you just want to come to the in-person show and you're a student, it's only $10. So hopefully everybody can come and join us. I'm going to stop to share and say thank you to Derek for hanging out with me for the last half hour, and hope you can, Derek, you're going to come, right? You're coming to the screening.
Yeah, I'll be there.
All the way from Seattle, Washington, or is it Blaine, Washington?
No, I'm in Seattle. Yeah.
You're in Seattle. So he's going to be there. There's going to be lots of the artists there. I think Linda's going to be there too.
Yeah. Linda will be there.
Linda's going to be
Possibly
there.
Allie too. Yeah.
And hopefully Allie too. And then we also will have Margaret Beals will be there, the director of her movie. Adriana Davis is going to be there. It should be a love fest to celebrate 2 wonderful female artists. I look forward to meeting you in the flesh, and I want to thank you for doing this Q&A. Thank you, Derek.
Thank you, Al.